3. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, programmers from PHP, Ruby, Python, JavaScript, welcome to the Daily Code, episode 7, I think, where I goof around making code, and you watch and hopefully it's entertaining and you learn something. Or I just goof around making code. Yesterday, we looked at starting to create web applications with Icicle, the PHP framework that is written using generators to do asynchronous code. And today, we are going to continue that. And we're going to do that by enabling our application to serve static files from a protected directory, to serve them through the Icicle application. And before we do this, I just actually want to talk about alternatives, because I'm sure this will come up at some point in comments or just generally on the internet. Why would you want to use PHP to serve static files? It's a good question, so thank you for asking it. You'd want to do this if you didn't have access to use something like Nginx or Apache to serve those files. And generally you would use those things. I mean, you may not even want to serve your static files on the same server as your application requests. But I was thinking, Icicle has a really cool library for doing asynchronous file system stuff, and I'd really like to dig into it and learn how it works. And I think this is a good example of doing, well, I mean, it's a good opportunity to do it. I don't know if it's such a great example of doing it. So I'm going to set up routes in the application, and I'm going to serve static files through them. But just bear in mind there are other ways to do this, and they may be much better for your application. This isn't the only way or the best way. It is our way. Okay? Okay? Also, I'm a PHP 6 certified engineer. That's just a joke. PHP 6 doesn't exist. Okay, let's get to code. So this is the library I was talking about, the Icicle file system library. And it's not typically what you would expect to see in an application. These days, most apps use whatever the framework that the app is using provides, and more, that's turning out to be Fly System. It's a library written by Frank de Jonge, and you can find it at the phpleague.com. And this lists a bunch of really cool curated stuff. Fly System you can find here, and what this is a file system abstraction with a lot of different providers that you could use to store your files, but they're mostly synchronous and blocking. A notable exception to this is that the Amazon AWS S3 driver is based on the AWS SDK, which works with Guzzle, and Guzzle has an asynchronous implementation, the later versions of it, so we could theoretically use the AWS S3 SDK to do non-blocking stuff. We're kind of not going to, because I don't want to take it apart right now. What I'd rather do is have a look at Icicle's library for doing this stuff. So, I think the first step is maybe just to set up a route. You remember yesterday we set up a router for serving requests through an Icicle server. I'll just load this up so that we can see it in action. PHP index. And so we won't see anything here, but if we go to our browser and we say 127 or 8000, we should see a hello world. Okay, and that is because our HTTP server, which we create here, this generator function accepts a request. If you don't know about generators and this is the first time here, then I don't know, check out the archives for yesterday's episode. But this generator function gets executed for every request that comes in and has access to the associated socket. So we can basically tell lots of things about the browser request. It then creates an instance of, I don't know if we should create this instance here. Maybe we should do this on the outside. The thought has just occurred to me. We don't need to create that dispatcher for every request. That's probably wasteful. But we can pass it in here to say, use dispatcher. Yes, okay, so this is perhaps a more efficient way of doing this. Remember, because this is a long-running script, we need to restart it when we do significant changes because we don't have a live reload implementation here yet. Okay, but we create a fast route dispatcher. This is Nikita Popov's library for doing fast routing. We load in a separate file, which I'll show now. But essentially, when a request comes in, We dispatch that, which means it matches the request method and it matches the request path to a route that we set up in our application. If it's not found, we still need to implement the 404 behavior. We still need to implement the 405 behavior for if someone's trying to do a patch or a put or a delete request type to a route that doesn't support it. But what we have done is we've set up the found thing. Now, when we define these routes, we're going to attach special callbacks to them, or I guess you could say we're going to attach generator routes to them. So the first thing that FastRoute gives us back is what those generator factory functions are. Again, we'll see what this looks like now, but assuming this is a function that creates a generator, we can call it with the request and the socket, just like we're getting here, and yield that. And because it's the last thing that this server constructor generator parameter, because it's the last thing this is yielding, it is assumed to be the response. Lastly, we set the port that the server must listen at, and we run the event loop. Now, over here, we're requiring routes. This looks like this. We add routes on here because of where it's required. The callback in which this is required gets given a route collector. So to that route collector, we can add routes. So if a get method request is made against the root, the root route, then the stuff gets run. Again, this is generator stuff, and you probably want to check out yesterday's episode in the archives, but this is like a temporary storage that we're using to store the body that gets returned back to the browser, which is why you see hello world and get, is because we're adding hello world and the request method to this temporary body storage. We then create a new response and give it the length of that temporary storage and that temporary storage. And we need to use a stream here. Memory sync is an instance of a stream. Like if you have a look up here, it's from the Icicle stream repository. And that's because response expects a stream as this argument. So whatever gets rendered to the browser gets read from the stream. Okay. Now we've got this serving hello world, and if we add more routes, we can serve other dynamic content, but what we actually want to do is we want to know how to serve static files. So let's create a folder here, call it public, sure, why not, and we'll just put a file in here called foo.txt. Hello world static file. Okay, so we've just got some basic hello world text within this foo.txt file. And let me just get browser windows up here. Now, when we create a special route for this, we can, let's just make sure that the extra routes are working. If we say foo, in fact, we'll say public foo, which will speed up things for us just now. Public foo, just respond with a plain thing, okay? So when we change this to public/foo, remember again we have to restart this process. But when we go back here, public foo, we get a 500 error. Of course we do. Foo.txt. Okay, hello world get. That's because we're just repeating the same thing over here. Now, what we kind of want to do here, let's have a look back here at what FastRoute does. We get whatever is dispatched according to this request method and the path, but we're not handling extra parameters. So like variable parameters within a path, we're not handling that. FastRoute gives us the ability to do that. We could say something like file, and then like that, I guess. We could do something like this. In fact, let's just go have a look what that syntax is. GitHub. What is this repo? Is that it? No. GitHub FastRoute.